Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, we are going to have such a great discussion because we're going to be talking about leadership and really how to be a better leader. If you think you're the best leader in the world, tune out now. But I know we're not losing anybody, right? Because we all know that no matter what it is, we can always up our game and be learning more, doing more to make ourselves and those around us better. So please join me in welcoming our guest, Antonio Garrido, to our program today. Welcome, Antonio. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm fine. But before we joined, you said, so what's the best way to pronounce your surname?
And then I said it wrong.
Just go from Garrido or Garrido, but Giorgio, no, but Garrido, yeah. But
I've added an I in there.
I know you practiced as well, but anyway.
I know.
Thank you for the invitation.
Right. So yeah, I love it. So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this.
Okay.
So Antonio Garrido,
Garrido
is the author of My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success. It's on the wall there behind him. And he is the founder and president of My Daily Leadership, a leadership development organization with a mission to inspire 1 million of the world's best leaders to reach their full potential. Antonio has over 25 years in senior leadership positions with world-class businesses. He is an expert in leadership transformations, shaping high-performance leaders out of highly stressed and overworked leaders. Antonio blends his own vast commercial experience with proven techniques to embed a unique brand of leadership development. He is a serial entrepreneur, successful business coach, charismatic speaker, and leader from small private businesses right up to Fortune 60 size. So again, Antonio, welcome.
Thank you, Deb. Well, that's quite an introduction. I do appreciate that. I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say. That sounded
I know.
So, thank you.
Well, speaking of, I think one of the things that I always like to know is how our guests got to where they are today. So tell us a little bit more about that journey, because you have had truly an international career.
Well, I have rather. So, yes. Okay. Well, I'll try and keep it reasonably short because it's probably only interesting to me and my mum. But as we were talking before we came on air, we were talking about airport designs. I started a million years ago as an architect. I came out of university as an architect. Thought I would always ever be an architect. Kind of only ever wanted to be an architect, so it made perfect sense to become one. I thought at the time, for no real good reason whatsoever, I thought I would be spending my time designing cathedrals and airports and train stations and all of those museums and all of that good stuff. That's actually, I mean, some do, right? Some are very fortunate. I guess it's a bit like, every kid at school that plays soccer, wants to end up playing for, well, let's use a British analogy because I know them better. Manchester City.
I was going to say Manchester.
Yeah, exactly. So, and some do, but most don't, right? So anyway, I was an architect to come back to the chase. I found myself, my whole career, actually, Deb, as most careers are, I suspect, they're more as a consequence of luck than judgment, right? So I found myself, by pure luck, I imagine, working for a tremendous leader of an organization who saw in me and this is the way I like to think of the story, who saw in me lots of potential and thought that I could do more than be an architect on his team. Now, that's the story I like to tell myself. It may be that he thought I was a dreadful architect.
He's like pointing you in a different direction, right?
Why don't we take this one and put him into management? But anyway, that notwithstanding, whatever happened, he decided that I was kind of destined for less time on the drawing board and more time managing people, which was terrific. So I found myself enjoying that enormously, more so than designing kitchen extensions and stuff. That being said, however, I did win 2 awards, but we'll move on from that swiftly. So I worked for this incredibly enlightened leader, really spent a lot of his time developing his people, and I just happened to be one of his kind of, I suspect. And then he came to me after a year or so and said, look, we know that you're capable of bigger and better things, so we need you to go back to university to do some kind of, MBA type thing in strategic business management or like whatever interests you in leadership and development and so on. And we'll fund it and all of that kind of stuff and do that and this. And as soon as you get it, we'll give you a division. And then that's what happened. And I found myself kind of running from being an architect one day to within a couple of years running a European division of a fairly large organization. And then on and on and on and on until I found myself, as you say, the CEO or managing director of a top 60 PLC, which is, Fortune 60 company with thousands of employees and billions in revenue. And oftentimes would kind of ask myself, how did I get here from over there? The architect that runs, incredibly difficult and complex businesses. But anyway, so I did that for ages and ages. For years and years, having worked for some tremendous leaders. What then happened was we have 4 children. And my wife and I, and we were about to become empty nesters. My wife said, and I'd actually been doing some consultancy for the National Health Service in the UK and some other companies. And my wife said, let's go and live in Miami. Now, I used to go to Miami fairly often because my brother, who was the CFO of a pharmaceutical company called AstraZeneca, who we were talking about COVID as well, and they helped develop one of the.
We've heard of them.
Right? So he lived and lives in Miami, and every time I would go to a board meeting in Dallas, which isn't around the corner from the UK, but it's certainly closer. You're at least on the same continent. Exactly. So we would go to Miami fairly often and see my niece and nephew and brother, that kind of stuff. Anyway, so we liked Miami. My wife and I said, let's go and live in Miami. Turns out the American government like to have a reason for people to just show up. So
you have to. There's paperwork and
all of that kind of nonsense. So I started, my brother and I, we started a business that then allowed me to be in. If you put enough money into anything, they let you go.
The paperwork gets done.
That's how that happened. So. And we were incredibly lucky. Over 10 or 12 years, we grew that business, probably the 3rd largest sales development company in the world. And, we were super duper lucky. I wrote a couple of books on the back of that, both pretty well selling books. And then I thought, I've been coaching the best leaders, some of the best leaders around of very large and some very small companies, just even solopreneurs and some but really, really good people. And applying all of the stuff that I had been taught by the leaders that I worked for who were just phenomenal. As again, more luck than judgment. And so I thought, listen, I ought to kind of codify this into another book, which is this book you see behind me, My Daily Leadership. And that turned into its own business.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's how we are here today talking. Was that enough detail, or is that
It
okay?
was perfect. And it was funny because as you were saying it, I thought it made perfect sense for you to be an architect and do what you do now because you are designing people and companies. See, I
Well,
can write your marketing stuff for you.
well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. So it's funny you should say that, because I talk about that principle
Mm-hmm.
a lot with my leaders, with our clients. We have in this business an awful lot, like a massive amount of models, business models that we use.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm fairly visual
Mm-hmm.
for obvious reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I will think on paper,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll design things on paper just as you. And I one of the things I learned really early on,
Mm-hmm.
with, again, these tremendous CEOs that I worked for, group chairman that I worked for, all the ones that I worked for were of a similar bent, and if they had a problem to work through, they would think on paper or on a whiteboard.
Right.
But here's the beauty of it. They would then develop that model, develop that logic, develop that thinking, to the point that they could then use that to describe it to others, right? To show others. So, for example, there isn't anybody, and I don't want to get too technical at this point, but if your audience, your listeners and readers and watchers, if they don't know what Ansoff's matrix is, Ansoff's matrix, right? It's a matrix that's designed by a chap called Ansoff, right? Who taught about products, new products and existing products, and markets, new markets and existing markets, and figuring out that existing products into existing markets is a low risk strategy, but new products into new markets is a high risk strategy. And then the other two are therefore medium risk strategies. Well, that's a beautiful model that can design what your next, NPD, new product development process over the next 5 years looks like. And you can use that to explain it to others. So back to your point. When I'll say to a leader, for example, I'll say, so have you been a leader this week, or have you been a manager? And they'll go, right. When we first start talking to them, some will say, well, they're the same thing, aren't they? Some will say, right? Some will say, oh no, because if you give them the choice, leader sounds better than that, right? They'll go, oh, no, I've been a leader.
So, it sounds more impressive.
Right. They think it justifies, the proximity of their parking space to the front door.
Yeah.
So, and then some will say, well, I'm not sure, right? And then so rather than just have them, guess, we'll wrap a model around it, because we wrap a model around all of our principles, just as you said. So we'll have them draw, for example, an X and Y axis, and along the X-axis, which is the one that on the horizon, we'll say task focused or people focused.
Okay.
And then we'll have on the Y-axis reactive or proactive. So, well, have you been more proactive or reactive this week? In other words, who set your agenda this week? Is it all the fires around you, or is it you're doing a bit more, constructive and proactive? Or are you responding? We talked about responding and reacting, didn't we, before? Are you reacting to things, or are you responding to things? And then, are you task focused or people focused? Just plot where you've been, and then I'll tell you, if you've been task focused and reactive, you're probably in management mode. If you've been proactive and people focused, then you're probably in leadership mode. So we'll use these as a visual, and it's amazing what happens, Deb. You show them that once, and then I'll go to a board meeting where oftentimes they'll ask us to critique their performance in the board meeting. And they will wheel out these models as if they designed them themselves, which is terrific, right? But they use them to explain to people things. So you're actually, it's quite insightful of you to say, being an architect probably helped you design better companies, because it's actually Very true. So well spotted. I don't think anybody else has made that leap.
Oh, see, I told you I could write your marketing stuff.
Nice. Good.
Yeah. And I find it interesting, the difference between leadership and manager. And there, obviously there is a difference. You can be both. I mean, and I think that's, like when you said, when they're plotting things on the XY axis, they have been doing both. They've been managing the fires, the tasks, but they also have been leading. But one of the things that I always find interesting is frequently you have the manager, who might have that title, right? And it's a totally different person in that group, that organization, that department, that whatever, who is the leader.
Yeah, for sure. I think, so a couple of things to say about that. First of all, most leaders do both. And I'm okay with that, so long as it's entirely intentional. So if there's enough intentionality wrapped around it, then I'm okay. Other than, well, I have to be a manager this week because of fire 2, fire. And I'm okay with that, so long as it's once in a while. But if they're constantly firefighting,
there's an issue. There's an even bigger issue.
There is a bigger issue, and 99 times out of 100, if they take a good long look in the mirror, there's the arsonist staring back at them, right? So it's something to do with intentionality, and I'm okay because all leaders have to manage at times, and all managers have to lead at times. And to your second point, it's very true that you can be a tremendous leader and a dreadful manager, and you can be a tremendous manager and a dreadful leader. But oftentimes what happens is a lot of leaders get promoted above their capabilities, and they have been great managers, and somebody thinks, oh, we'll put that guy in charge, and they're awful. My football team is Manchester City, and soccer team, depending on where
we're here. It's not football.
no, tomato, right? Potato. So my football team is it's called football because it's a ball that you kick with your foot.
Yes, it is football. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So he's probably the best leader, best coach, of a soccer team in the world, recognized by everybody, not just because they're my team, right? It's a really well-known fact. He was actually not a very good player. but
and we see that.
Exactly. So there are some people who are, great at both, terrific. They're fair, more rare than not. But I'm okay if a leader spends time managing because they have to. But what I want them to do is be very intentional about it. And leaders' jobs, whilst they have to manage at times, what we tend to say is, look, you're doing okay if you're got it 70% leading and 30% managing. This 70-30 rule is okay. So long as it looks like that and it doesn't look the other way around consistently, because then there are other issues probably to do with skill sets, probably to do with capability.
You might not have the right employees.
Exactly.
All sorts of things.
Exactly. But the reality is that if it's a startup, everybody does everything. It's all hands to the pumps, right? But as the business then grows in size and therefore, complexity, of course, then let's just be intentional about what it is that we're doing on a daily basis. And otherwise the business runs us instead of us running the business.
Right. And that is unfortunately what we see. And then that's why we have burnout.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things you talk about in your book, which is again called My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success. Now, I'll be honest, it's over 400 pages. But there's a reason for that, folks. So don't let that scare you off. It's because it needs to be that long to have the great content. But I didn't read it word for word, but I can skim pretty good. So one of the things that it talks about is, are leaders born? So is it nature or nurture?
So, by the way, my other 2 books weren't nearly as long, but I had so much. You're right. This could have been 2 books. Here's the other challenge, though. I'm also currently contracted to 2 more books following on. So imagine it's going to turn a Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? Each of them is just going to be
right.
Yeah. All I would say is don't drop it on your foot. That's all.
Okay.
So Yeah. So some people think that in the same way that they think you're either, you're a born salesperson or you're not, right? Which is complete hogwash. And you're a born leader or you're not. Like if you're lucky enough to have the leadership gene stamped on your DNA, and you're going to be a leader, and if you're not, you're not. Which, I don't think. Oh, absolutely, I am firm in my belief that you're not born a surgeon. You're trained to be a surgeon.
Right.
You're not
you can have some innate skills.
Yeah,
but it has to be brought out, and because you can't just be, like you said, you just can't be handed a scalpel.
No, exactly. And I think that, yeah, you're right. Some people might, for example, have higher self-awareness than others, right? So they may have some, proclivity towards leadership. But that being said, again, it comes back to this intentionality that if people are sufficiently motivated and they want to be a good leader, then it can't be beyond the wit of man for us to make that happen. So leaders are 100% made and not born. I do know some leaders who have a tremendous amount of, let's say, quote unquote, natural gravitas. And I know some others
they have that personality that just
exactly. Some have quote unquote a naturally analytical brain. So everybody's got some kind of particular talent that can help them. What I also find, and everybody recognizes this, is of course, Deb, that nearly every leader has come to the position via a particular route. So there are a lot of CEOs who were previously CFOs, and they've come through the finance route. They were an accountant, or maybe an auditor, and then an accountant, and then CFO, and then they became CEO, right? And therefore, they tend to have a fairly numerical way of looking at the world, which we have to beat out of them. Now, some others will have come through the sales route or the marketing route. We have to beat that out of
They're
them.
people person.
Yeah, but when you're a hammer, you think everything looks like a nail. So when a CEO was a serial CFO, they think that the answer lies only in the numbers, not in people.
What's
so
the ROI? All of those various things.
Exactly. So we do have to beat that out of them. But to answer your question, they're absolutely made and not born. Absolutely. So there's, if anybody has, I think if you are a leader and you're listening to this, even if it's of a tiny organization, just one other person or just you, right? You can be a leader of just one. Don't think that if you're failing, it's because you're not a natural leader. Just be intentional about being the best leader that you can be, and you can get there. You can.
Right. Well, and that is, of course, the premise of your book and of the services that your organization provides is how do we take these people either from, they just got promoted to that position, or maybe, they've been the CEO, C-suite, whatever, forever. How do we improve upon that? And I love the book because it really does walk you through this process. And of course, one of the things that most impressed me was that this is an ongoing journey. You never reach that pinnacle. One of the things you talk about in the book is grade yourself. Somebody who, is saying, well, I'm an A, I'm the, no, now hopefully they're not an F either, but, maybe they're B's or C's, right? But you can always improve yourself. And so it's how do you do this daily? So and so talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, let me just back up the bus just for one stop, right? We're just going to back up just for one bus.
Okay.
So, again, before we came on air, we were just talking about COVID, right? So just before I went to the Super Bowl and got
COVID,
just before that, I did a talk for about, 300 or 400 leaders from all around the world, all sizes, all shapes of companies, all markets. I asked them this question. So pay attention now for everybody listening. Get yourself a piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to give you some practical things to think about. And I asked them all, I said, okay, by a show of hands. So I asked the audience, by a show of hands, who here has no leadership blind spots? Okay. Now, fortunately, Deb, nobody put their hand
Nobody
up.
raised their hands. Yay.
In other words, everybody recognizes that, yeah, they probably must have some leadership spots because we all do. Like, none of us are perfect in every single regard, right? Despite the stories that sometimes want to tell ourselves. But anyway, so 400 odd people recognized that they all had blind spots. So that was terrific. It's a good start of self-awareness. I said, okay, terrific. So congratulations, everybody is that was the right answer for everybody. Now, if everybody would just take a second and just write down what their own particular leadership plans are. Yeah, nice.
Back to that self-awareness thing.
So if we knew what they were, then they wouldn't be blind spots, right?
Right. Yeah.
We don't know what they are. We know that we must have them, and we don't know what they are. So the first problem is we've all got blind spots, but we don't know what they are. Here's the second problem. And I ask all of our clients this question in probably our first or second session together. I typically ask them, hey, George, hey, Mary, whoever, right? What percentage of the time do you think your people tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Right? Now, whilst we accept it's not 0, neither is it 100.
Right.
So what people tend to do is they'll tell you a version of the truth that they think it's in their best interest to have.
What's going to not get me in trouble?
Right. Right. So, and here's what never happens, Deb, right? So at least my experience has never happened, and I've run large companies too, that nobody will come and knock on your door and say, hey, Deb, you got 5 minutes? And you'll say, yeah, sure. Come in, George. What's on your mind? Sit down. Open door policy around here. You know that. How can I help you? George says, well, Deb, I've been watching your performance over the last 6 months or so. And I just thought I'd like to share with you that I think you're dreadful in every regard. I think the way you do this is awful. That's terrible. This is dreadful. And if you do that thing one more time, I'm going to scream. Right? That never happens.
No.
Never happens. So we've got some blind spots. We accept that. We know that our people aren't telling us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Right? We know that. It's hard to tell someone they've got an ugly baby. We know that. Right? I saw a great interview with George Bush Sr. He was no longer the president, but chaps insist on calling ex-presidents Mr. President. So anyway, he came off the 18th green of a pro-am golf tournament. Some reporter shoved a camera in front of his face and said, how was the golf today, Mr. President? Just to reiterate, he was no longer.
He was, former,
So he's former, right? How was the golf today, Mr. President? And he stopped and he thought for a while, and he said, it's amazing how many games of golf he's lost since leaving the White House, right? And wasn't it interesting that whilst ever he was the president, everybody let him win, right?
Yeah.
He's the president.
So, I'm going to shank it today.
Right. Well, and exactly, right? So we have this issue that we've got blind spots. Nobody's going to tell us, right? Even if they do, we're trying to defend, justify, rationalize why we did the thing that we did. And then, so how do we improve? If no one's going to tell us,
right?
We've got a coach, but we know that we're not perhaps as perfect as our mother told us we were when she was on her knee when we were 4 years old. So what we say is, look, we have to build self-awareness because it's not just going to fall out of a tree. We have to be very intentional about this. And self-awareness is one of the key components to emotional intelligence. And there is a stack of evidence, like overwhelming research. We allude to some of it in the book by famous drink companies like Coca-Cola.
I am in Atlanta.
Yes, exactly. So, to figure out what are the traits of the quote unquote most successful leaders and divisions around the world, and emotional intelligence, EQ, is a very, very, very high predictor of leadership success, much more than IQ, fortunately enough. So, when you said earlier, are leaders born or made? IQ is kind of stamped on your DNA.
Right.
10 years old and have an IQ of 89. When you're 43 years old, you still got an IQ of 89.
Right. You might have tweaked it a little bit here or there, but not an awful lot.
Just a tiny
You have
bit.
not become Einstein.
Right, overnight, right? Just because you're eating your bananas. So basically we say, look, EQ is critical. Self-awareness is a critical component. It's not going to fall out of a tree, and no one's going to tell you. So if you're a client of ours, you don't have to be. So I want everybody to recognize what I'm about to tell them they can do, right? So if you're a client of ours, we always do an assessment, and there are assessments on our website. Look at. So you'll take an objective view and say you're good at this, and this, but you're fairly dreadful at this, and this. And once you've gotten over the shock and disappointment of what
that you might have had more dreadful than not, right?
More blind spots than you thought were even possible, then we can start doing something about it. So like the doctor taking the X-ray and the MRI and the blood test, saying, "Here's your prescription," and if they gave you a prescription without having done that, you'd call them a quack. But anyway, so we say, look, let's start to build our self-awareness. So I'll tell everybody a quick story that they can do, and then I'll come back to the point that you were making. So one of these terribly inspirational leaders I worked for, I'd just been given a job, which I, frankly, between you and I, Deb, and I can say it now because enough time has passed, I really wasn't ready for, right? It was a big job. It was politics more than anything else. It made more sense to give it to me than to go outside the business. At that
That happens all the time.
Yeah. So I got the gig. I wasn't sure. I mean, I was delighted, but I wasn't sure that I was
because you got more money. And like you said, a better parking spot.
I got a lot more money. And then 2 days in to the gig, there was a handwritten note by group chairman on my desk to go and see him. And I thought, I've been found out already.
Yes. Oh no, there goes my parking spot.
The gig's up. Somebody's realized. We talk about this story in the book, but basically to summarize it, I went to his office and sat down, and he asked me this question. So all your readers and listeners and everybody, consider this for a second. And he gave me a piece of paper and he said, have you ever worked for a bad boss? Do you know what a bad leader looks like? Do you know what a bad manager looks like? Do you know what a bad boss looks like? And I went, yeah, sure. He said, okay, well, write down the attributes of that person, characteristics of that person. So I wrote down 5 or 6 things, and I imagine I wrote, micromanager, inconsistent,
yells at people, right,
blows hot, blow cold, all of the stuff that you can imagine. He said, yeah, great, write down a few more. So then I wrote a few more, and then he said, perfect, just write down a few more. So I wrote a few more. So I now had a list of what does terrible look like, and I would encourage everybody listening to write down. I don't want to give you too much. I don't want to give you my list, but you can all imagine what a terrible boss looks like. So he said, yeah, that's really good. That's a really great list. He said, would you do me a tremendous favor? Of course, said I, thinking I was going to get fired 5 minutes ago. I said, yeah, what can I do? He said, well, whilst ever you're in charge around here, will you promise me you will never, ever do anything that's on that list? So I thought, yeah, what a great way to remind you to be a good leader. And then he said, now carry that list with you at all times. And if ever I see you in the corridor or meet you in the canteen, have that list ready, take it out and talk about it. And that's what we did for years. Right?
I love it.
Yeah. And here's what also happened. One day, something fairly dreadful happened, and somebody got hurt at work. And we were in a board meeting, and he came into the board meeting. He didn't come into every board meeting, but what he did do was quite surprising. He said, guys, look what's happened. Kind of looking very shamefaced and so on. And he said, look, everybody get your lists out. And he did the same exercise with all of the 13 directors, right? And he said, that's happened because we've all done the stuff on this list, right? And it constant reminder to be great. Anyway, back to my point. And your audience can do that. Write down what terrible looks like, and then resolve never to do those things. He was also the same guy that said to me, he said, I got a couple of questions for you I'd like you to think about. I said, okay, yeah. What is it? He said, did you earn your money today? And did you do your best?
Mm.
And I said, oh, yeah.
Sure.
Said, well, what makes you say so? And I said, well, because I came in early. I did this and this and this and this and this and this. So, yeah, I think I did earn my money today. He said, okay, I'll go with that. He said, every day, ask yourself, did you earn your money today?
Right.
And he said, if there's ever 3 consecutive days where the answer was no, come and see me. I'll give you something to do.
Right.
So, and then he said, well, what about, did you do your best? I said, oh, yeah. He said, what makes you say that? I said, well, because I did this and this and this and this and this and this. And he went, well, let's unpick that for a second. What's best? And I said, well, best. Then I started to describe best. And he said, best is every time a sprinter goes and practices, he makes a personal best. That's impossible. Right. Best is a 120-pound lady mother lifting a car to free it. Best is a very high bar. Did you do your best today? He said, every day I ask myself, this is him talking. He said, every day I ask myself, did I earn my money today? And the answer is always yes, and that's good. Did I do my best today? And he said, most days it's no. He said, did I try my best today?
That's very different.
Different question. He said, and then if you said, well, no, I didn't do my best today, come back to your point about self-grading, about saying, would my leadership report card say A+, day after day after day after day? It's impossible. But what it does, if you think, and I'm asking everybody to do this also, at the end of the day, look back on the day, right? This is hindsight, right? So with hindsight, look at the day and give yourself a score. Let's imagine you say, yeah, do you know what? I wasn't bad today. I give myself an A-. Okay. So your leadership report card for today is A-. What that forces you to do is to say, well, how could I have made that A- an A+?
Right.
Now we're starting to build a bit of introspection and a bit of self-awareness and a bit of emotional intelligence. Because you say, well, when I told Mary this, or when I said that to Brian, and I didn't do this, and maybe I should have done that, right? And it starts to build that self-awareness.
Right.
And that hindsight, when you've done that with enough frequency, and I'm only talking about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not talking about 2 or 3 years. What then happens, Deb, before too long, a couple of weeks down the line, you do that consistently every single day. Like, did I do my best today? No. But did I try my best? Yes. Where was I lacking? What that then does, if you make a commitment to do that every day, in the same way that you make a commitment every day to brush your teeth, you might not know it. I can't imagine there's been a day in the last 20 years when you haven't brushed your teeth every morning.
Because it's become a habit.
Because it's just what you do. And when this becomes just what you do, what will happen in a couple of weeks' time is somebody will ask you a question, or you'll be faced with a set of circumstances, or some event will have happened, right? And now it's time to respond, not react. Now it's time to respond. And you know that in 5 hours hence, when you're reviewing the day, future Antonio, instead of giving yourself an A-, what would I need to do now so that future Antonio will give me an A+ for time? And then what that does, that hindsight with enough frequency leads to situational insight, where you go, well, I'm not going to say this, I'm actually going to say that.
It becomes automatic. Because
that's what world class would look like. Okay. What then happens is that then leads, do that with enough density, that then now, so we've got some hindsight, situational insight, some foresight to say, do you know what? We need, there's an iceberg over there, which doesn't look very big, but probably bigger than it looks. Let's recite, let's move the business, let's kind of try and course correct. So that needs daily attention, daily attention. So where are you going to write all of this down? So another leader once said to me, hey, Antonio, do you journal?
Right. And this is the premise of your book, folks.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where this whole thing started 30 years ago. He asked me, did I journal? Now, of course, at the time I didn't. So I said no. He asked me why. And the first thing that popped into my mind was probably because I'm not a 16-year-old Victorian.
You're not writing Dear Diary.
Right. So I no, I didn't. And he said, okay, well, that's fine. Go and find 8 of the most successful people you can find in any walk of life, whether it's anything, and think about it now. Think about any sports personality, any entertainer, any politician, runner, like Steve Jobs. Did he journal? Yes, he did. Oprah, does she journal? Yes, she does. Bill Gates, does he journal? Yes. Musk, does he journal? Right? All of these people all journal. So anyway, I discovered that myself, and I asked 8 people who I thought were the 8 most successful people I could find, and they all journaled. And I went back to my boss and went, okay, probably not a coincidence, right?
Right.
Right. So, okay, so I'll start, but I don't know what to write. I don't know how long. I don't know what to write about.
Because you didn't want to do Dear Diary today. Exactly. I did.
Exactly. And I didn't want it to be he said, it's not a to-do list. It's a to-become list, right? It's a to-be list. And he said, it's not about your life. And he actually said these words, you're not Ernest Hemingway. You're not that interesting. He said, what I want you to do is to start to be a bit more intentional about this, what we're talking about, which is daily leadership report card. He said, every morning, on our website and in the book, there's masses of examples we give you of what kind of things you should start to think about.
Right.
But every morning, just set some leadership or management or whether strategic business intention for the day. And then at the end of the day, when you're reviewing that, so you've got this morning momentum, evening evaluation, just keep a record of all of this stuff in one place, right? Your journal, right, with your pen, and start writing this stuff down. And before long, and it really isn't very long at all.
Right. Yeah, you talk in the book 20 minutes. This is not a big deal, folks.
Yeah. And
get off of Facebook for 20 minutes and do your journal.
Easy. And before long, patterns start to emerge. And what then happens is you can then start, and again, you don't have to have done our assessment for you to do this. Anyone can grab a pen and anyone can grab a notebook and start being intentional about the leader that they want to be. And your people deserve it. If you are a leader, you have a responsibility. It's my coach, because I couldn't possibly be the coach.
Everybody needs a coach.
Everybody. Well, anybody that, if you want to improve.
Right. Yeah. But Tiger Woods has a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach.
And these are the best in the world, and every day still try and get better. Well, if Tiger Woods tries to get better every day, then so should you.
Right.
I don't mean you. I mean everybody.
No, I should too. I'm okay. You can include me in that. You.
Yeah. So my coach coaches presidents of countries as well as companies, right? And if his clients haven't journaled that week and send him a photo of their journal, he won't coach them. He won't take their call.
You didn't do your homework.
Exactly. So you want me to help you with the problem that you haven't even tried to address yourself. It's not going to happen, right? So I'm not saying I'm quite as dictatorial as that, perhaps. I'm not sure what the correct description of that, but you get the idea. But we do, we have lots of programs. Our clients, if they don't journal, we won't train them. We won't coach them. If they don't try and help themselves, we won't help. We will put in as much effort as they do. But when you follow this program that we advocate, that talks specifically about the particular model of leadership greatness that the pattern that we have noticed, the similarity of all the great leaders, then once you start to do that on a regular basis, that the improvement is staggering. 3 times this week alone. Here we are on 10th of October. 3 times, and we're only on Tuesday.
Right.
3 times already this week, I've had 3 C-suite individuals independently of each other, and there are more of them, but I've only spoken to 3 so far this week, who all report to a CEO, who, by the way, is a tremendous CEO, very, very, talented and very dedicated individual. But on 3 occasions so far this week, 3 very senior people have said to me, independently of each other, I don't know what you've done with George, name change to protect the innocent.
Protect the innocent.
Like, I don't know what you've done with George, but I had this great conversation with him, and at the end, he hugged me, said one of them. I don't know what you did with George, said another one, but I had a conversation with him about bad news and surprises that in the past he would have lost his mind. So thank you for that. And another one said, I don't know what you've done with George. It's like, who are you and what have you done with George? I don't know what you've done with George, but George is just a much nicer guy to talk to than he ever was. Still running a huge organization, multi-billion-dollar organization, and now he's a much nicer chap about it. So here's the point: that when you do this, it doesn't make you a better leader. It makes you a better person,
right?
Better father, better husband, better wife, better brother. But it just makes you
better,
a good egg. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
Did that answer your question? I can't even remember.
It did. This is a great conversation.
All right.
So one of the things that and why is it so important? Because it is that you are putting pen to paper to do this and not using your word processor on your computer.
That's a great question. And this is one, when I said earlier, when people say, well, I don't know what to write, and I don't know how much to write, and what should I write about, and how do, what's the point? And we get over that hurdle fairly quickly because we say, well, just write what we tell you to write. Day one, write this.
And you have, like you said, you have tips and things, do this, do that, suggestions.
We actually have a program that runs every day for 2 years, that every single day we tell you exactly what to write. But anyway, back to your question. They say some that resist it. And mainly, if you think about why people do resist it, it's because this is largely what we have, Deb, when we're trying to change people, because that is basically what we're about.
I don't want to change.
There is resistance, right? So when we ask them to do this really difficult introspection and intentional development and so on, there is some resistance. And so the subconscious finds lots of reasons why this is too difficult for me. Remember, there's no growth in your comfort zone and there's no comfort in your growth zone.
Right.
So this is going to be difficult. It's going to be a journey of self-revelation. And one of the things we need you to do is write. And they go, hold on a minute. Do you mean write with a quill?
Right.
On parchment? And we go, listen, we know it's the 21st century. Right?
Yes. It's a ballpoint pen and paper, folks.
Get yourself a piece of paper and a pen. Why? Well, there is stacks of research that says, here's the thing, none of us can write as fast as we can type. And that's what they tell us. They say, I can type a lot faster than I can write. And I said, look, we're not after quantity. We're not after pages and pages and reams. And we're actually after quality, not quantity, right?
Right.
So we want you to pare it down. And your pen, it intellectualizes you. It forces you to edit. So you have to think be very intentional about the words that you select. And then you tell your hand to write that word. And you watch your pen write that word. And then you justify and confirm to yourself that was the word. So there's a big feedback loop involved in writing. And people that write a journal, I can't remember the exact, something like 2,000% quicker development than people that
right. Yeah. It engages your brain in such a different way that you remember it.
Exactly. And you absorb it. So we recognize that the most difficult thing that we ask people to do It's not even morning and evening. They get over that very quickly. And it's not even the difficult questions that we ask them. They get over that eventually. But handwriting, but here's what is interesting, Dan. It's staggering how many leaders tell us, and it's normally the ones that are most against it, that they love it. And we'll tell them things like, what's better to receive? A handwritten note from the CEO saying thank you, or an email thank you? They go, handwritten notes. Well, you've got the pen, right? You know what writing, right? Get some cards made. We actually encourage them to write with a fountain pen. They don't have to. I have a pen here, which I write with every day, and I have another, which is like, it's not a fountain pen, but it's a ball, it's a five. But there's nothing better than receiving a handwritten note from us. And
we keep those, right? We all have them on our bulletin board or in a special box or something like that.
It's the other thing you keep. And we talked about this with a client of ours last week. Client of ours last week is probably about a year and a half into our initial 2-year program. And he said, when I get to the end of this program, is there any way we can take all of these journals that you've made us write, leather bind them all together in one weighty tome that I can leave to my kids? He said, because I would love to have known what my granddad or dad was thinking every day about the world, life and people and relationships and how to get. He said, I would love to have known what my dad.
I love that.
Yeah. And he went, can you help me give this? I want to leave it to my kids. And that's now, this was only last week, and that's now a service that we also offer, so that that oftentimes want to leave a legacy, but wouldn't you? I would love, my dad's still around. He's 90.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But there will be a time when he's not. And then you can't ask them questions anymore.
Right. And you mentioned your kids. I mean, and their kids who would have never known
probably
him.
not as interesting, but you never know. When I'm not around, they take it for granted when you're around. It's when you've gone that they think, oh, do you know, he wasn't such a bad old stick after all.
Might have actually known what he was doing.
Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe it wasn't all thrown together with spit and salt. So anyway, so that's why we have them handwrite it as opposed to.
I love that. And the other thing you talk about,
ChatGPT hasn't come up with it.
I know, and I like ChatGPT, but it's not going to tell me these things, right?
Love it. I love ChatGPT, and I love it for leaders. We get them to use ChatGPT all the time.
Yeah, there's a variety of benefits for that. But you also talk in the book about do it every day. Even though this is about your work life, do it on the days where you're not working, on vacation, all of those things, because that all pertains. I mean, we have yet to find a boss that truly goes up 5 o'clock, ding, and they don't think about it again until, the next time the clock goes ding.
Yeah.
There's still all those things going through your brain.
Yeah. And I think, so let's say we've got a CEO, and let's say they're 55 years old. Just for a number, there's nothing wrong with 55. But if it's taken them 55 years to look like this, you don't turn that plank around in 5 minutes, right? You've got to every day. If you are a leader, then at 5 o'clock, as you say, you're still responsible for your people. So you take on that full-time responsibility, not burden, but responsibility. And there are so many times, countless times. Listen, here's the truth. Okay, truth bomb time. I got 4 kids and family and so on. People are never more than 15 feet away from this.
I know.
Never more than 15 feet away from one of these. If you're never more than 15 feet away from one of these, I cannot tell you how many times I have thought, oh, that's such a great idea. Yeah, I'll do. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll work on that. And then the next day think, what was that tremendous idea I had?
Right.
Oh my God, it's gone, right? But if you have one of these within 15 feet, what was that tremendous? Before you know it, you're actually working on it and you're drawing, and you're doing, a mind map on it, and you're thinking about it and stuff. Not only do you sleep better, right? Because it's not going around in your mind, right? But actually, that great idea will move forward much faster and stuff because you've put it in you, and you can look back at it when you're 2 weeks later, you can go,
right. Well,
So-
and of course, we're leaders all the time,
All the
not
time.
just for that paycheck, leaders of the family, leaders in your church, volunteer, all of those things. And that is the entire process of who we are. It shouldn't just be when the clock goes ding.
No, and it's true. It isn't. I don't know any leader that mentally, even if physically don't, that mentally clocks out at 5 p.m. and clocks in again at 9 p.m. Well, if there are any, we wouldn't certainly coach them. But
no, because those are the people that gave themselves an A+.
All the time, constantly. And one of the funnest things is when we do an assessment of a leader and we tell them, and when we see that they have low self-awareness, we all have a choice to ourselves. We go, this is good. Because when we say, hey, you've got some issues here, 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 they go, have I? No, right? Because they've got low self-awareness, right? They don't believe it. And then we go, are you married? Have you got any, yeah, show your wife and call me tomorrow, right? And then
and they get real self-aware real fast.
Yeah. And they go, okay, I've spoken to my husband and you're probably right. So, but then when we see a leader with good self-awareness, we think it's going to be a breeze because we say, here's where you need help. And they go, you're exactly right. Where do I start? So, so for those that take an assessment with good self-awareness, we have good fun. And for those that take an assessment, I've got low self-awareness. Everything's an arm wrestle for the first couple of weeks, but we get things.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Antonio, this is so much fun. I am learning so much. And and we've just really scratched the surface on this. And so I think it would be great to have you on to continue this conversation. Yeah. I think it's been such a great conversation. But for people who are interested and are saying, hey, I need to improve as a leader.
Which every one of them does.
Yes. Right. Everybody, hello, raise your hands, even if you're driving. And so, how do they reach you, and what are the services that you provide? Of course, buy the book. That's one of the first steps.
Buy the book,
right. And we'll have the link in the notes. But how do they find you and connect with you, and what are the services that you provide?
Okay. Well, I'll just say this, that if you are a leader and you take that responsibility, then you are duty bound to improve, because when you improve yourself and your people, by default, you improve your business, and your job is the future of yourself, your people, and your business. So you don't have to have us help you, but somebody should help you.
Yes.
Right? I'll get it out of the way. The book's available, paperback, on paper, electronic, audio. I narrate this one.
I love it. But do you do the footnotes? I love the footnotes. Folks, you got to get the footnotes are worth it. I started going back and rereading to find the footnotes.
I know. People, they tell us that, and they are, some of them are laugh out loud.
Right. Footnotes. They're not, this is where we got this resource. It's your little quips.
Yeah, exactly. Like naughty leader basket. So, the book is My Daily Leadership, available in all good bookstores and on the internet. But the website is also all the W's, mydailyleadership.com. And if you want to email me, it's Antonio@mydailyleadership, and I promise I'll reply very quickly. I promise it's important to me. Now, when you go on the website, there's tons of free resources. There's health checks. The leadership health checks, not physical health checks. There are journals that you can download, there's assessment to take. Have a look around, right? See what our programs are. We have a 2-year elite, leadership development. There are those that just want to do it on their own, without any coaching, without any hand holding. They just say, give me the material, let me do it. And that's fine for those that do that. And then some that say, hey, listen, I want to be part of a group, and that's great.
Some people need that guidance and support. And you talk about that in the book.
They need that accountability as well. And then some like a lot of our clients as well, who are more corporate clients, they go, hey, it's not just me, but it's the whole
our whole
group,
team needs this.
the whole gang. Can you help us with the whole gang? And obviously that's a bit more of a bespoke thing, but they all do, if you don't journal, then we won't coach you and train you.
Right, because that is a very important, critical part of this.
Critical. It's like, if you're an American footballer, there you go, I'll talk about the language that you get. It's blocking and tackling. You go to training, and every day they have you do sprints, and they have you do push-ups, pull-ups, and in the gym and on the bicycle, because that's what you have to do when you the gig. So
the basics are important.
Basics are critical. So however you engage with us, whether you by yourself, as a group of others, that even though you start off as strangers, you end up as friends, or even if it's a corporate, everybody has to journal, otherwise we won't help you, because we only touch you, occasionally in the week, but you taught
it needs to be an ongoing and continual thing.
You taught yourself 70,000 times a day, so we want that to be better. So that's how you find us, mydailyleadership.com.
I love it. Well, Antonio, this, as I said, I can't wait to continue this discussion because it's been so much fun. And I don't know, you might actually convince me to journal. I'm like one of those that,
Give it a whirl.
I know, this is true. This is true.
Well, are you the finished article? No. Do you have any blind spots? Yes. Do you know what they are? No. Pick up a pen, figure it out.
And just and we all have to start somewhere. I mean, that's the thing. Exactly. So, do you have, until we have the delight of chatting with you again, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I want everybody to realize that wisdom comes from evaluated experience. Evaluated experience, not just time served. So start evaluating where you could have done. When we finish this tonight, I'll have another meeting to go to in a second, but tonight I will be thinking about how I could have done better here today. And that will make me better next time. So some you win and some you learn.
I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely wonderful conversation with Antonio Garrido.
There you go.
I got it. Of My Daily Leadership. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.